There, this is Abhilasha Sharma, and you are watching Godly Mahatarma. And on today's show, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic. And the topic is, can you guess it? Let me give you 3 seconds to guess it. Come on, take a guess. Tick tick one, tick tick two, tick tick three, and you cannot guess it. I know because today we are going to discuss free will. Free will is something real or it's a man-made hoax. I believe it's a hoax. Now because I have done my all research and as much as I can think of it, it seems like a hoax. But I have to make my case, and in this video, I'm gonna make my case and why it is so fucking necessary for us to know that free will doesn't exist. It's very important for us to know. So this is my case, guys. Free will, two words we use very casually and defend very passionately. In Hindi, we call it Sankalp ki Swatantrata. The idea of free will says that somewhere inside us live a sovereign authority, calm, rational, independent, making choices and steering our life like a competent CEO. Let's take an example. When you choose a shirt in the morning, blue, green, black, it feels like a small declaration of freedom. No one forced you, no one threatens you. You made that choice on your own. And yet, philosophy and now science too are asking the same question. Are you sure? Are you the only one who picked that shirt? Come on. Or is there somebody else who is doing stuff for you and you are just doing the stuff like a puppet with freedom? Okay. So, what do you think, guys? What do you think? As I have said, who is picking the shirt? My laptop has just froze. Oh, a frozen laptop. Come on, dude. Come on, work. Get in the scene. Cut. Are you the one who picked that shirt or your action truly yours? Do you truly have the free will to pick out anything for yourself? Or they are simply that the final output of forces you never choose? God, nature, society, childhood, biology, causation effect, causation itself. Who is doing it? So I'm naming God. It can be God, it can be nature. If you don't believe in God, it can be nature because nature is there. We have to believe in the nature. You cannot say universe doesn't exist, trees doesn't exist, nature laws doesn't exist. They do exist. Physically, we have proven them. And physics has all the proof that nature is there. So you cannot deny nature, even if you're an atheist, we can deny God. So if not God, then you have to believe in nature. If not nature, then is it society? Because your name picked by society, your religion picked by society, your conditions picked by society, your language picked by society, your culture picked by society, your schooling you picked by society, your education picked by society, your thoughts, your influences, your society, your leaders, everything you name it, your whole lifestyle is picked by society. So is it society that is picking stuff for us, or it's us? When we say society, then it's a collaborative effort, or it's our childhood, all the childhood dramas where our emotional traumas are the first teachers. So is that picking for us, or it's biology? Who is it? So we assume ownership because our thought happens inside us. That's the reason. That's the reason we believe that the ownership is on us because we have the free will, and we consider it's a free will because we believe that all our thoughts are happening inside us. We are the one who are making our thoughts. But is that happening? No, that's not happening, guys. It's not happening. But proximity is not proof of freedom. A thought appearing in your mind does not automatically mean you authored it. When we say our action might be the final output of forces we never choose, God, nature, society, childhood, biology, causation, we are pointing to something deeply uncomfortable. None of us started from zero. You did not wake up one day as a blank page and begin writing your life. You arrived already written upon. Your temperament, your fears, your sense of right and wrong, what feels natural to you, were shaped before you were capable of consent. Culture taught you what is respectable, family taught you what is safe, biology quietly decided your impulses, your energy levels, your emotional intensity. By the time you start choosing, you are choosing from a menu you never designed. We never designed this menu and we are choosing from it. And this is my case, guys. Please do listen. We assume ownership of our choices because they arise inside us. The thought says, I want this, and because it used the word I, we immediately believe it belongs to us in the deepest sense. But this is where the confusion begins. Location is not authorship. Just because a thought appears in your mind does not mean you created it. You don't choose your next thought the way you choose a shirt. If you sit silently for 10 seconds and watch your thoughts, you will notice they arrive uninvited. You cannot predict the next one. You cannot stop them from appearing. They simply surface, and yet, the moment they do so, we stamp them with ownership. Think of it like a pop up notification. It appears on your phone, it's on your screen, but you did not write it. You didn't send it. You are just the receiver. Similarly, thoughts are event that happens to consciousness, not necessarily events authored by it. The mind is like a commander, issuing orders, and more like a surface where things show up. Memory, impulses, fears, desires, often without asking permission. This is why proximity is not proof of freedom. A thought being close to you inside your head, using your voice, speaking in first person, doesn't automatically make it an act of free will. Dreams happen inside you too, but you don't claim authorship of them. A sudden wave of anger rises inside you, but you didn't sit down and plan it. Hunger appears, attraction appears, fear appears. Don't they? They do. Your experience, you respond to them, but you didn't choose them into existence. So when a thought says, I want to do this, philosophy asks a dangerous question. Where did that want come from? Was it freely created or was it predictable outcome of prior causes? Your past experiences, your emotional conditioning, your neurochemistry, your social environment. If every desire has a history and every history has causes you didn't control, then freedom begins to look less like creation and more like inheritance. This doesn't mean you are helpless or meaningless. It means that we casually call choice may actually be the last visible step in a very long invisible process. By the time a decision reaches consciousness, much of the work has already been done in backstage. Consciousness doesn't instigate the most thoughts, it witnesses them and then narrates them as mine. The narration is powerful, it gives coherence, it gives identity, it gives responsibility, but power does not equal origin. So when we say appearing in your mind does not automatically mean you authored it, we are challenging the most basic assumption of free will, that because something feels personal, it must be freely chosen. The mind feels like a courtroom where you are the judge, jury, and executioner. But in reality, you may be more like a journalist, arriving slightly late, documenting events that have already begun. And that realization is not meant to humiliate us or depress us, it meant to humble the ego. Oh, and the frozen laptop is back. Oh my god, it did not. Another proof that free will does not exist is the belief in the theory of determinism. Every time we scratch the surface to understand free will, determinism enters the room and whispers. Determinism says every event has a cause and every cause has another cause before it. an infinite chain stretching backwards long before your birth certificate existed. You did not choose your genes, you did not choose your parents, you did not choose your country, your language, your emotional vocabulary. We already discussed this, and yes, we did not choose. And yet, all of these are present when you make a decision. When you choose a green shirt, psychology suggests you are responding to unconscious associations, hope, calm, nature, memory. Neuroscience goes further and tells us something deeply unsettling. Brain activity indicates a decision can be measured before you consciously feel you have decided. Now, listen very carefully. In the early 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet decided to test something that most of us take for granted. The moment we decide, he didn't begin the grand moral dilemmas or life altering choices. Instead, he chose something almost insultingly simple. He asked people to sit quietly and flex their wrist whenever they felt like it. No instruction on when, no pressure, just pure spontaneity. While they did this, Libet watched their brains through EEG machines, tracked the exact movement their muscles moved, and most importantly, asked them to report the precise instant they felt the intent to act. Using a rapid moving clock as a reference, it seemed harmless, almost boring, but what emerged from this simplicity was deeply unsettling. What Libet noticed was a quiet signal in the brain, later called the readiness potential, slowly rising in the motor cortex. The signal appeared hundreds of milliseconds before the wrist actually moved. That alone wasn't shocking. The shock came when reported the moment they became consciously sorry. The shock when participants reported the moment they became consciously aware of deciding. That awareness arrived after the brain had already begun preparing the action. In other words, the brain had started the process first, and only later did consciousness step in and says, I have decided. The action followed shortly after, like a curtain falling at the end of the play that had already been rehearsed backstage. Imagine it like this. The orchestra begins tuning, the lights dim, the stage crew moves into position, then the narrator walks out and announces, the performance is about to begin. Conscious intention, it seemed, was the conductor but the announcer. The feeling of choice arrived late, but claimed authorship anyway. Libet himself was disturbed by this and tried to rescue human agency by proposing what he called free will. The idea that while we may not initiate action consciously, we still veto them at the moment. We may not start the engine, but perhaps we still hit the brakes. So you don't decide whether you want to do this or you, but you can decide that you don't want to do this. That is a kind of a free will that we do have still. Otherwise there's literally no free will, and this is the experiment done by Benjamin Limit which just proves it. Decades later, the story deepens. In 2008, neuroscientists Soon Brass, Hesin, and Haynes used fMRI scans to predict which button a person would press, left or right, several seconds before the person consciously felt that they had made a choice. The brain, it appeared, was quietly leaning towards a decision long before the mind felt decisive. This the prediction weren't perfect, but they were far too accurate to ignore. It was the brain knew the ending of the story while consciousness was still pretending to improvise. Like our brain just knew it. I mean, just imagine the time those people were doing the experiment and they must be like, oh my god, this is sensational. We do not have free will. I mean, A lot of philosophers said that we have free will. Scientists used to believe that we have free will, but these experiments just proves that we do not have free will. So what these experiments don't say is that humans are puppets, or that the meaning evaporates. What they suggest is subtler and far more unsettling. The voice that says, I choose this, may be narrating the rather than initiating. Consciousness might be less like an author writing from scratch and more like a journalist reporting events already in motion. The sense of agency remains real, powerful, and necessary, but its timing is suspect. And once you see that delay, once you notice that consciousness arrives slightly late to its own decision, the idea of free will doesn't appear, it simply becomes complicated. But who wants us to study free will? I mean, from where this idea even came into my head that, you know what, Abhilasha Sharma, you should create a video on free will. Who is telling me? Who wants us to decide or even talk? I mean, who is telling you to click on this video? That, 15 minutes in, we're gonna have this question. Just, I mean, it is so complicated, but it is so amazing. Most of our life is lived on autopilot. Thoughts arises. Okay, I missed one line that I've lived. But there's a catch to this story. We all can have free will if we practice mindful awareness and decide consciously of our pre-effectors. Like, Benjamin Libet said that you have a free won't. So if we have a free won't, then you can have a free awareness, and then you can practice whether you want to do something or you don't want to do something. You want to do something or you don't want to something. I said it correct. Oh. Most of our lives lived on autopilot, thoughts arising, emotions flow, actions happen, and only afterward do we tell ourselves a story about why we did what we did. In this mode, free will is almost non-existent. Another, how many pages I am in? 4 or 7 pages. Okay. Most of our lives is lived on autopilot. Thought arises, emotions flow, actions happen, and only after do we tell ourselves a story about why we did what we did. In this mode, free will is almost non existent. Anger appears and we shout, desires appears and we act, fear appears and we avoid. The brain does learn patterns efficiently because efficiency, not freedom, is what evolution optimized for. And autopilot. We are not choosing, we are reacting. In this state, determinism fits perfectly. Past causes flow through uninterrupted. But something changes the moment awareness enters the process. Awareness does not create thoughts, thoughts still arise automatically. Neuroscience is very clear on that. What awareness does is create a gap, a pause between impulse and action. In that gap, the system that usually runs unchecked becomes observable. You notice the thought instead of immediately obeying it. I am angry, I want this, I am afraid. The thought is still not chosen, but your relationship it has changed. This is where free will does not mean generating thoughts, but choosing how to respond to them. You may not choose the impulse, but you can choose whether to pursue, modify, or inhibit it. This is very close to what Benjamin Libet called free will, the capacity to veto an action after brain initiates it before it executes it. Awareness acts like a braking system. It doesn't design the road, but it can slow the vehicle. Careful decision making is not the absence of causation, it is adding a new cause into the chain. Reflection itself becomes a casual factor. When you pause, evaluate consequences, recall values, imagine outcomes, you are activating high order brain process that can override automatic responses. Determinism doesn't disappear, but it becomes layered. Instead of a single straight line impulse to action, there is now a loop. The system begins to regulate itself. This is why mindfulness, self reflection, and ethical training matters so much across philosophical and spiritual traditions. They are not trying to make you free from causation, they are trying to make you less dominated by unconscious causation. Freedom here is not absolute control, it is degrees of influence. The more aware you are, the less you are pushed blindly by forces you don't see. So, free will in this view is not about on off switch. It is it is something you either have or don't have. It is capacity that increases the awareness when you are unconscious of your inner process. You are mostly determined when you become conscious you gain a limited but meaningful power, the power to interrupt, to question, to redirect. In other words, free will does not exist at the level of thought generation, but free want exists at the level of thought endorsement. You I mean just I have to repeat this, that the free want exists at the level of thought endorsement. You don't choose what appears in the mind. We just don't do it and we have to accept it. But you can choose what you align with, what you resist and what you let pass. That choice may be constrained, conditioned and imperfect, but it is not nothing. And that is why responsibility still makes sense. Not because we are perfectly free, but because we are capable of becoming more aware. Freedom is not a birthright, it is a practice. First, let's talk about the past because this is where the most people bleed silently. When you understand that much of the past behavior happened on autopilot, driven by conditioning, fear, unmet needs, unconscious patterns, you stop trying unnecessarily self hatred. This does not mean you deny responsibility, it means you replace moral violence with understanding. You realize that the version of you who made those choices did not have the awareness that you have now. Guilt softens into learning, into shame turns into data. Healing begins not when you justify your past, but when you see it clearly without cruelty. This perspective allows forgiveness as a spiritual slogan, but as psychological hygiene. You cannot heal a system by attacking it. Understanding is the first repair tool. Now, this is where awareness based free will actually operates. When you know that impulses will arrive automatically, anger, craving, insecurity, you stop mistaking them for commands. You don't panic when a destructive thought appears because you no longer believe thoughts are orders. You create space. In that space, reactions slow down, conflicts de escalate, decisions improve, you become less reactive and more responsive. This is not enlightenment, this is emotional efficiency. Life becomes quieter inside, and that quiet is not emptiness, it is control where it matters. The present moment stops being battlefield and becomes a control room. Then comes the future. This is where the monetary and strategic advantage appears. People who live on autopilot patterns create predictable outcomes. Awareness allows patterns interruption. When you can observe your habits, procrastination, impulsive spending, self sabotage, you gain the ability to redesign them. Financial growth does not come from motivation, it comes from delaying gratification and consistent behavior. Awareness increases both. You stop confusing comfort with value. You stop choosing short term relief over long term gain. This is why mindful people over time make better investment, manage risk better, and build stability. Not because they are smarter, but because they are less hijacked. Socially, this knowledge changes everything. When you realize that most people are acting from unconscious programming, you stop personalizing their behavior. Insults I have to edit this. This is blowing my brain. I mean, come on, this is so, so amazing. Socially, this knowledge changes everything. When you realize that most people are acting from unconscious programming, you stop personalizing their behavior. Insults lose some of their poison, rejection lose its sting. You become harder to manipulate because manipulation works best on unconscious reactions. You listen better, you respond rather than explode. Leadership actually naturally flows, not loud leadership but stable leadership. People trust those who are not constantly triggered. Relationship deepens when reactivity reduces. Awareness makes you safer to be around, and safety is social wealth. This understanding makes also makes you a better human being, not a moralistic way, but in a functional way. You become less judgmental because you see causation everywhere, less cruel because you understand behavior as condition rather than evil, less arrogant because you know how little of you is actually under your control. Compassion stops being performative and becomes logical. You don't excuse harm, but you understand it, which allows you to respond intelligently instead of vengefully. Finally, this knowledge gives you quite power, not the power to control life, but the power to stop being controlled blindly by it. You stop demanding absolute freedom and start practicing relative freedom. You stop asking, am I free? And start asking, where can I be more aware? How can I become more free? That is the question that we should ask. Instead of asking, am I free? Do I have a free will? Can I practice free will? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Where can I become more aware? That shift alone changes trajectories. Free will then is not dead, it is simply being demoted. It no longer lives in grand declaration, heroic fantasies. It lives in pauses, in restrained reflection, in the ability to say, I see this impulse and I choose whether to act on it or not. That may not be total freedom, but in a world running on autopilot, it is rare and compounding advantage. So, guys, this was my video on free will. I do hope that you really, really liked it. If you didn't, please let me know what you didn't like. And if you did like it, please let me know what you liked. And that's it. I am Abhilasha Sharma and I'm signing out. You are watching Godly Mohatarma. See ya, guys. I love you a lot. XOXO.